Hello and welcome to this edition of Tech Community Live, Ask Me Anything on Endpoint Analytics. I'm your host, Dave Randall. I'll be hosting the session today, and I'm joined by several of my colleagues. Let's start with introductions for each of them. We'll go from top to bottom. Okay, we'll work our way around. Janus, go ahead and introduce yourself. Give us a little info about where you're from and maybe one of your favorite hobbies.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Janu Skull. Been with Microsoft 7 years as a product manager for Microsoft Endpoint Manager. I'm based in Charlotte, North Carolina here. Got some beautiful weather this time of year, and I love playing bass. I used to play upright bass as a musician for a long time.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Janus. Nina.
Hey Dave, hi everyone. Welcome to the session. My name is Nina Desnica and I'm a product manager in Microsoft Endpoint Manager team. And I'm based out of Switzerland. We also have a nice weather, and my hobby is the favorite hobby is hiking because we have so lovely nature here.
Wonderful. We've got some great hiking in the Northwest too, so I'm jealous. I need to get some Switzerland hiking in someday. All right, John, how about you? Introduce yourself for the folks.
Yep. Hey there. I'm John Callahan. I'm a senior PM manager based out of North Carolina. Been with Microsoft for a little over 11 years now. And one of my favorite hobbies is hiking too.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Again, welcome to everybody who's on this AMA. We've got some questions that are coming in, but let's get started with one question. And for those of you that have been around since maybe the introduction of Windows 95, I don't know if you recall, there was a video that was the Rolling Stones Start Me Up video that was part of the whole release of Windows 95. And Start Me Up is actually one of the interesting scores that we have the startup score for Endpoint Analytics. So I'm wondering whether or not one of you can talk a little bit about some of the components that go into the startup score and how customers can best leverage the information that's provided by that.
Sure, I'll take a start at it.
Sure.
One of the components in the startup score that is great to start investigating, especially if you have a hybrid environment, is the impact that group policy has. So if you have you're enabling endpoint analytics across your entire organization, all of your existing devices, and you're thinking about a move from hybrid Azure AD join to Azure AD join, you can use that as a metric, the group policy impact on your startup, as maybe a way to push that forward and start that migration earlier. It's a great way to start modernizing. Azure AD join is a great identity solution, and especially thinking about increasing your end user experience by getting rid of those group policy objects. Start looking there. Maybe use that as some motivation, seeing how long it takes devices to start up, processing all those group policy objects.
Excellent. Any other thoughts from Nina or John on startup score?
Yeah, one I'll add in there, in addition to looking at group policy, it's also looking at the time that it takes for the device to boot up to get to the Windows login screen, and then the time that it takes to get from the point where the user's typed in the username and password and gotten to the desktop. And in addition to group policy, the startup score can also help you find other areas where you might find improvements on your device. So one common one that we come across is agents that are running on the device. Mm-hmm. So you may have lots of security agents, you may have lots of management agents and different programs that start up. Even the OEM sometimes put those on there. And those can contribute to increased time for the device to start up, especially if they're starting as services. And then also just time for all those programs to launch and the user actually to be able to have a usable desktop. And there's a great report that shows all of your startup processes, and you can use that as a drill down list to find, here are the agents, here's the applications that I have in my environment, and it gives you a score and a time that says how much this particular application is impacting. That's a great one to look at because it gives you a very tangible list to go look at, and then start seeing what are all the agents, what are all the apps that we have on our endpoints that may be impacting the startup score. And then there's other things that you can also look at, and this one isn't as common as it used to be, but there's also a very big difference between a device that has, say, a traditional spinning hard drive versus a solid disk drive. Those can be very important for the startup score. And then there's also some configurations for the device that can also impact it, such as whether you're still in legacy BIOS or UEFI, whether you're using fast startup, and those are all things that can impact your score. And I mentioned UEFI because that's very important for getting your devices to Windows 11, which is another report that EA has.
Nina, did you have something you wanted to add to?
I think John covered everything. I would just like to highlight one thing, which is the overall for the folks who might are not that experienced with endpoint analytics, that we have scores everywhere. We love these metrics because it really helps us understand how we are doing compared to the other organizations. So usually we would look at the endpoint analytics top down, like how we are doing as an organization, but looking at the like a cumulative score, and then we're able to drill down for each of the different workloads to understand how we are doing, in particular like a startup score or maybe application reliability score, and then drill down over and over. So this can really help you understand how you're doing compared to the medium. Back
All
to you,
right.
Dave.
Awesome. Thank you. So we've got a question from the audience. Can I somehow get from endpoint analytics through application reliability to app performance and get a list of devices listed for some application protection policy? I can only see a number of devices. Export is not possible. The specific case, I'd like to get a list of active devices that are using Skype. Anyone have some thoughts or suggestions on how we can help Miroslav out?
Maybe we can start unpacking from the beginning. How does it go? So first, we're starting from application reliability report, correct?
Yep. Application performance, and then get a list of devices that are listed for a specific app. So I think the key is that he'd like to get a list of active devices that are using Skype. So pick any one particular application, and he's interested which devices are using this. Do we have the ability to get that type of report for Miroslav?
Okay, so I think application reliability report is mostly there to gives us a heads up in something is wrong, if something doesn't work as expected. So we really want to steer away from getting a lot of data on IT admins that maybe if everything goes fine, they don't need to look at stuff. But if something is wrong, if there's a particular app with a bad reliability score, that's when we want to know if something is wrong. We want to look into which particular app that is, and also we want to get this list of devices on which this app is crashing. So this was the whole idea of app reliability, and I understand you from the description you would like to have something like on how many devices there's an app installed or like that scenario. And yeah, like I explained today, we're focusing more on the problems and to resolve them. But
Right.
Yeah, I'll double click on that a little bit. The intended use of application reliability isn't software inventory. So we don't want to know how many of your users are using which app, how much of the time. We want to fix and remediate issues that troublesome applications are having in your environment. When you enroll devices in MEM, though, you collect the managed applications that they're using or all the applications installed on the system, and you can build custom reporting or look at reporting of app installs there. But inventorying and usage is not something that Endpoint Analytics is built to collect.
Yeah, and I will just add to that. Within MIM itself and the devices blade, there is a discovered apps list that you can look at, and that would show devices that had Skype. It is in a different part of the portal, but that is a good way to get that list. But we will take the feedback that an export button in that UI might be useful.
Yeah. All right, great. Thanks, John. So the next question that we have is from Gibson. We don't have a Cloud Connect or anything turned on. Right now, we're 100% on-prem. And so if I go to endpoint.microsoft.com, it's just a bunch of empty blocks saying, ask your admin for rights. What rights do I actually need in Azure to do things like timeline, endpoint analytics, or cloud management of on-prem devices? So this is a little bit more of a role-based administration question than it is an endpoint analytics. But if anybody has some thoughts about the best way to help out, let me know. Or I also have some thoughts myself. So I'll leave it to to you three first to offer some suggestions here.
Sure, I'll take one crack at it. The one distinction I'll make is that there are a few roles in Azure AD you can assign that do have viewing rights into the Mem console, but those aren't necessarily required. There are specific roles in Mem in the RBAC pane that you can define for basically configuring viewing into any portion or access or pane in the portal. So you can create users that only have administrative access to devices or administrative access to reporting, or can edit things but not change things. It's a very deep level of configuration for RBAC that we have in the Mem portal. As for which ones you need specifically, it would take combing through all of the various settings and panes to kind of pick and choose what you want. And it is very, very specific, all the various settings that are there. So it may just depend on exactly all the things you're looking for. Licensing wise, though, there's an option to not require a license. By default, all tenants have had that for a few years now, so you don't need any license to access it. You just need RBAC controls enabled.
And something I'll add there, it wasn't clear to me whether tenant attach was enabled, but I think the link for that just got posted in the banner here. But the documentation for tenant attach, which is the feature that you would enable to have your non-cloud devices to connect to Mem and be able to have that data in the Mem portal and have things like timeline view and endpoint analytics. The documentation for that has the minimum requirements to be able to set that up and to be able to start to use it.
Great.
Did you have something to add, Nina?
Just before you get to the RBAC part that
Yeah.
we'll leave to you, Dave, just wanted, I cannot let it go, like the completely on-prem comment. So just wanted to really, really encourage Gibson to start looking at the options to connect to the cloud, either that it's tenant attach as one of the prerequisites or co-management or Intune only. Please start looking at that. You will benefit from so many great features, including endpoint analytics. So back to you, Dave. Sorry, couldn't let it go.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Thanks for including that, Nina. So I was going to suggest that there's a simple way to grant permissions for the endpoint console, and that is if you add the Intune admin Active Directory role. So you'll need to go to Azure Active Directory, select a user, add a role for that user, and you'll choose the Intune admin role. That will give full permissions to everything in Intune for that particular user. So as Janus said, if you're interested in having more fine-grained permissions, then you can use the Intune specific roles, add users and individual permissions for any users that you want to restrict capabilities in the Intune console. But the Azure Active Directory Intune admin role will give full permission. So if you want to get started and just take a look around, that's the best role. But know that it does give you full permissions to everything in the Intune console. All right. To our next question then. This is from Florian, and this comes to us from LinkedIn. With an M365 Business Premium license, some key analytics features are not available. For example, ASR reporting on proactive remediations. Are there any plans to include some more for SMBs? Anybody have a little bit of roadmap information that we're able to share on going to Business Premium, M365 Business, small business?
Yeah, there's nothing that we can share on that today. The licensing requirements that are stated in the docs are the current licensing requirements, but we can take that feedback back.
Okay. Great. Thanks, John. All right, next question from Matthew. How can I focus my evaluation on a specific group of devices? I see there's a device scope dropdown. How do I create a new device scope? The only option I have is all devices. Sounds like some flexibility is the question here.
So I will start off. So first of all, thank you, Matthew. It's a great question, and I just first want to address that you're not doing anything wrong. This is how it is right now. You are supposed to only see all devices at the moment, but we did hear this feedback from so many customers, and this is definitely something that we're looking at because it will be very, very useful to have this flexibility to pick and choose specific group of devices where we can look into like specific metrics. So thanks for the feedback, and stay tuned. Maybe in the future we will have more to share.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. I would even offer, if you have additional ways you're looking to scope those devices and want to provide more feedback, that would be great to share here as well.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right. Next question from Thirunavu Karasu. Does application reliability include third-party software like Adobe?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take that one. Application reliability includes basically every app and service running on the system that Windows knows is running. Everything reported into Windows, all the things that you see in Task Manager, right? All of those files and processes running are all bubbled up into application reliability. And then the Microsoft Endpoint Manager, Endpoint Analytics console kind of combines all of them and creates all these scores based on it and all of the software that it sees. And it can report on the versions of the software itself, what dependencies it may have. Yeah, it reports on everything. Definitely third-party software.
And I'll just add a little question to that for everyone's benefit. Is there any difference between the application reliability information that we have for Microsoft products versus third party, or does everything all roll up exactly the same? Doesn't matter whether it's Microsoft or third party? Because I know sometimes we have a little preference to our own software.
In the reporting capabilities wise, it's all rolling up the same way. It all includes the same information as long as the vendor has provided it in kind of their logging that they write into Windows. So generally, everything is written the same across the board for all apps.
Awesome. Great. Thanks for the clarification. All right. Question from Rob DeRuse. Are there any plans on bringing proactive remediation to customers with M365 Business Premium? We have a lot of customers that could benefit with that option. We're now working around it using Win32 apps, but that's a lot more work.
Yeah, I think this was a similar question to the one before.
Mm-hmm.
So until we have any updates on our licensing, it's not currently with M365 Business Premium. But yeah, we'll take the feedback back and let the teams know kind of that you're looking for it there.
Got it. All right.
And Stephen, it will be great since we're hearing this already second time to write us some examples, something that you were looking into. How would you use the proactive remediation, especially in SMB? That will be very useful for us to know. So write us in the comments.
All right. Next question from Stephen. Are there any example guides for using endpoint analytics, maybe for helping troubleshoot slow login times or identifying problem apps? Maybe a guide to RBAC for just analytics, a guide for identifying apps that may have an issue with the next OS upgrade or feature, guide for identifying fixes for models that are currently not Win11 compatible, but the model itself is compatible, just not the current device state. Lots of different questions in there, so we've got an opportunity to share some of the responses among each of you.
Yeah, there's actually quite a few really good ideas in there for some things that we could document or have examples in the EA docs or on the tech community blog. In the EA docs, there are some guides and step-by-step examples for some of the scenarios in there, but there are some others like RBAC, which was mentioned in there, and I believe also looking at OS upgrades and how you would take that with the app reliability reports and also some of the new Windows 11 readiness reports. I don't think we actually have a guide that goes through all of that, I imagine that some of the great folks in our MVP community have probably written some of those. But that is really good feedback, and maybe that's something we can look at in the future, is providing some more step-by-step guides. But I do encourage you to look at the EA docs, and I see that that just popped up in the banner. That's awesome. There are some step-by-step guides there, and if we were to add more, that's likely where they would end up.
So, specific question on the Windows 11 compatibility. So, the Win 11 compatibility report right now will show you whether or not a particular device, based on its configuration, is compatible with Windows 11. But the question was, whether or not the device is in a particular state. Even if the device is compatible with Windows 11, if there's a particular state that it's in, do we report out the state mismatch so that that can be remediated and make the device capable for Win 11 upgrade?
Yeah, we do. So in the Windows 11 readiness report within Endpoint Analytics, it does show what the compatibility reason is. So if it's say missing a TPM, or maybe that TPM needs to be enabled, it'll show whether the device is ready or not. And then there's also some new reports in the MEM reporting node under Windows updates that also provide some new additional compatibility reports for getting the device ready for not just Windows 11, but the next feature updates. And that report provides lots of details on not just the hardware compatibility, but also things related to applications. So say you have an application that prevents the OS upgrade from taking place, that would actually be called out in that report and would say this app needs to be removed or reinstalled, or whatever the remediation step may be for that app to be ready for Windows 11 or whichever feature update you're installing. And those are not in Endpoint Analytics, but they are related to the data that comes from Endpoint Analytics, and you'll again find that in Intune reports, Windows Update, and there's two reports that you'll see that have this. It's the Windows Feature Update Compatibility Risk Report, and then also the Windows Feature Update Device Readiness Report.
Yeah, those reports are brand new from a month ago, right? Just released?
Just about a month ago, yeah, brand new. And they are very detailed and great to look at.
Excellent. All right, our next question comes from Daniel. Why would the time sync of a device be different on proactive remediations after a specific script has been applied to the device? The time that is shown there in the report for a specific device is not the real time of last sync of the device. So in proactive remediations, what time sync applies here?
Oh, sure. I can take that one. When you create a proactive remediation and you create the detection and remediation scripts, once those are uploaded, then you configure the frequency. And that frequency is independent of the regular Intune 8-hour sync that occurs, that you see devices sync for policy apps and everything. Proactive remediations actually run on the frequency you define. That could be daily, that can be hourly. I think that's as specific as we get currently. But that's where you might see a different frequency than maybe the 8-hour regular sync that you see with other policies. So that's why a lot of organizations see using proactive remediation scripting over deploying a script just through the console as an application, because they have more granularity over the frequency that it applies.
Got it. Great explanation. Thanks, Janus. All right, going to a question from Ugur in LinkedIn. Are there any plans to move the proactive remediation option in the MEM portal to make it more visible to admins? It's a very useful feature and should be more on the front. For example, in the device blade above the script option.
Yeah, that's great feedback, and I think we've all heard that before. That proactive remediations is awesome, but it can be kind of hard to discover. We have heard that, and we are investigating ways to make proactive remediations and scripting in general within Intune more discoverable. And you're also probably familiar that there's the proactive remediation scripting option, and then there's the regular PowerShell scripts option with an Intune,
Mhm.
and those are two very similar solutions that do the same thing but in slightly different ways. And we find that lots of customers love proactive remediations because it does some things a little better, and then even the PowerShell scripting does some things in a little different way. And discovering and knowing the difference between those two is something that we're looking at. And so I'll just say stay tuned there.
We're glad you love proactive remediations as much as we do. It's
Yes.
I'll add in one thing just in this context as well. When you're creating proactive remediations, you're also needing to think about things in your environment that you want to remediate. And you can use endpoint analytics for that discovery, right? That's what startup performance, application reliability kind of bubble into your environment. What apps aren't functioning the way you expect? What processes are hogging your startup time? So it kind of also makes sense for it to be in that location, because what are you going to remediate if you don't know what's happening in your environment? So now you have all of this information about here's what's happening in your environment. And then you can write those scripts to take action on the activities you see there to improve your scores. So definitely great feedback. We need to share it broader, but also think about how it fits into that location as well in your environment.
Thanks, Anus.
All right, we got a +1, I'll say, and it's maybe even a ++1 because Miroslav says, please move the proactive remediation to a better place. It's a great feature and it's too hidden. So, all right, on to our next question. This one's from Zeb, and it's a feature request. Are there any plans to add something similar to the Memcm Community Hub to allow the sharing of proactive remediation scripts publicly in the Mem console?
Yeah, so that's a great idea. There's nothing specific that we can share here right now, but what I can say is that we are looking at options to make scripting more discoverable and easier to create and author within the portal. How that shapes up in the future is to be determined. But we are looking at various options like a community hub or other things to help discover scripts. And I love the idea. We all love the idea. We know that there's the community, including our MVPs and some of our IT pros out there, are writing great scripts. But you have to be deeply embedded in the community sometimes to find them. You have to be on Twitter all the time or on Reddit or all these different forums. And we would really like to make it easier to discover those. And we're looking at the best ways to do that. Thank you for the feedback, and we'll take that back as we continue the investigation on how to help the discovery.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. And actually, coming from Scott asked the question: any chance of creating a central repository for proactive remediation scripts? So we'll definitely put
Yes.
the +1 or and the way it usually ends up going with a lot of these customer engagements is customers like Scott, like Zeb, they're representative of a huge group of customers. So, it's really great that we have these requests for new feature capabilities, or like the suggestion was, moving things around, because even though we've got the number of people here, they're representative of a whole group of people who actually feel the same way. So thank you for posting your
Yes.
questions. And if you have suggestions, you're interested in how we're improving and changing the product over time, this is a great opportunity to get that in front of the folks who are developing and building the capabilities for endpoint analytics. So I thank you for your feedback and your questions.
Yep, and I'll +1 or underline that or underscore that as well.
Mhm.
The more we hear the feedback, the better. And just because you see someone else already post this in the questions or on Twitter, that doesn't mean we don't need to hear it from you as well. The more feedback, the more that we hear this, it's great to hear the feedback that you love proactive remediations and you want a way to find things within the community. The more we hear that, the more we're going to work to being able to deliver something there. Same thing with the licensing question that I think we've gotten 2 or 3 times already. Like, the more we hear that, the better for us. So please share.
Yeah, and I'll share a little insider tip. I'll give you a moment in a second, Nina, but I'll share a little insider tip, and that is that all the work that we do in prioritizing the new feature requests that we build out, all of that we use a huge weighting factor on customer input. So obviously we need to make some strategic decisions about things that we're building, and but there's a huge component of all of our regular planning sessions that's based on customer input. All right, Nina, go ahead.
Thank you, Dave. That is actually perfect segue for what I'm about to ask for. What I would be very interested to hear is what you're doing, or like how your path looks like into like getting a script or building your own. Because what we have seen, like while working with different customers, is that every IT admin is different. We would have a group of very tech savvy IT admins. They want to write their own scripts. They want to make sure they're as secure as possible. They will not like consume anything else. We have a different one which will look for what is out there, maybe get some inspiration of what remediations other people do, and then they will add and build on top of that. And there are people that are not really there yet, and they would prefer to have something completely ready that I can just grab and deploy. So for me, it will be very interesting to learn about how your path looks like. And I think this is also something that can help us prioritize and, like Dave said, strategically pick what we want to do so we can really help you in the best way.
Excellent. Thanks, Nina. All right, we have a question from Marco. Thank you for this session. This is great. Within proactive remediations, I have a couple of scripts running at the moment. My question is it possible to send out a notification against the task that's running, listing that there's some issues or that there's no issues?
I can take that one. That's one thing I would ask you, Marco, specifically is, are you trying to notify admins or are you trying to notify the user? So there's no native functionality for notifying admins of a proactive remediation, seeing increased detections, for example, that need to be remediated or that the remediation isn't working, something like that. So it does require you to be in the console to be looking at that reporting, basically. For the end users themselves, like if you are maybe doing a detection script on low disk space and you want to notify your users, hey, clear out your downloads folder or something because your apps are running slow now because of that, and you want to notify them, you have that capability, but it would need to be written into like the PowerShell detection or remediation script that you're using for that. So it requires some custom extra work, unfortunately, but it is possible. But a great feedback, though, for the admin themselves. I think that would be useful to have, to be notifying, 6 weeks after this deployed, all of a sudden we're seeing a spike in detections. I think that's awesome feedback. Definitely take that back.
All right. Next question is from Kamala Kanan. Do we get, by any chance, an Edge Chromium usage report or dashboard in Intune like we have in Memcm?
I think we definitely need to grab that feature request about reporting on the software. I think we had earlier a little discussion on the software, like monitoring the software usage versus application reliability. But I think it's interesting because it's only for Edge Chromium, so I'm interested what's behind that. But yeah, we don't have at the moment like reporting on the usage on the specific app, but I think this came up already second time, so we'll be good to discuss this with our engineering team to see what are the thoughts. John.
Yeah, and an additional question for you on that is Edge Chromium the only app you're interested in, or would there be other applications that you would want to monitor? If there's other apps or classifications of apps that you would be interested in, would love to hear that feedback.
I'll also add on the list of, or on the point of usage, whether or not licensing information is of interest. I know a lot of customers that I've had conversation with on software usage. They're interested in then translating that into whether or not there are licenses that are available or licenses that need to be reclaimed. So my point to that more is just as a matter of feedback, if there are licensing questions behind any application usage, that's good information for us to know and understand about as well.
Yeah, we can even take that further. Do you want it to be actionable based on them not using it, revoke their license, them not using the app, uninstall it? All the more feedback, the better for us.
Mhm. Yeah, the scenario around here is around this ask is really interesting. And another scenario that I've heard is detecting things like shadow IT, and that may actually be where this Edge Chromium question is coming in. Edge is your preferred browser, but you're wanting to know are folks still using other web browsers, or is there still Internet Explorer floating out there that you want to be aware of? Um, and then there may also be other classes. Maybe you have a preferred PDF reader, but then you may want to know, are there other PDF or chat applications out there? We've heard lots of feedback around this and your scenarios and how you would take the data if it were available and what actions you would take on that data would be really interesting to know. So please share it.
And to that point, actually, when you're in the Endpoint Manager console, there's a place for you to send feedback to Microsoft, and that's a great place because it's context specific, and a great place for you to send information back to us about whether or not the feature is working for you. Feel free to do both positive, and if you've got challenges with it or you'd like to see improvements on it, that's a great place to be able to do it. And that does, of course, go directly back to the product group and the engineers like those of us who are on the call who are responsible for building and prioritizing those new features.
Mhm.
All right, next question. Any suggestions on how to deep dive and get more information on devices that are being falsely reported as unknown for Windows 11 readiness status, even though when you export results to CSV and all checks are marked false?
Yeah, so that one. I think we would need more details to know what's going on here. What I would encourage you to do is to open a support case for Intune and see if they can take a look at what is going on and why this unknown status is coming back. There can be a few reasons why that's happening. One of the more common ones is just the device isn't being used very frequently, and it seems like you're also seeing a little bit of discrepancy in terms of the data that's shown in the portal versus what's in the CSV file. That's also pretty interesting. I encourage you to open a support case, and our engineers will be able to take a look at that.
Yeah, and of course, support cases are included with your
Hmm.
Intune subscription. So, it's there's a pretty low barrier to entry for being able to open a case and get folks to take a look at it. All right. Streaming across the banner is where you can post your questions. So if you have any questions, please keep them coming. We're getting closer to the end of our time together. So if you do have any questions that have come up and you want to post them, please take an opportunity to do it as quickly as possible so that we can cover them. So now from Stefan, how can we adjust proactive remediation so to just see the latest success or failure instead of each user, including system that logged into the devices, so that we can have accurate reporting?
Yeah, so like you described, currently it's more of an aggregate report when you look at a proactive remediation. This is another scenario where that's great feedback, and we are kind of investigating right now how we can bubble up better information, just to tell you about a specific device or when specifically that remediation was applied to that device. All things that we're looking into. Definitely appreciate the feedback there. But yeah, you're looking at the data correctly. It is an aggregate report and currently for proactive remediations.
Got it. All right. Thanks, Janus. Um, Now I know that we've got probably a pretty international audience. We've got people who are all over the world who are joining, and also who will be taking a look at this after the live session. So I know that we have a work from anywhere score. We've got a lot of people working from anywhere, but we've got a work from anywhere score in endpoint analytics. So I'm wondering if we can get just a little idea of what's what that score is about so that people can understand and take advantage of that.
Sure. So work from anywhere report really I think was very beneficial in the COVID times, where we faced the challenge that most of the organizations who never had like cloud scenarios started looking at that. Many organizations who never had a hybrid or working from home option started doing that because they were like it was that kind of challenging situation, and we had everyone had to adapt and find a way to work things out. And I think working from anywhere is something that is still not a trend, but here to stay. Like hybrid work is going to be the factual thing moving forward. And I think this report really gives specifically benefit to multiple on multiple bases. So first one, for all the organizations that are having multiple scenarios. So for example, you have devices that are Intune only, maybe you're doing like a POC or something, and then you have still your co-managed devices and you want to see how these two compare. You have a mix between Azure AD join and hybrid join devices. So if you have and you're interested or you are in this path of transition, then this report can be very valuable for you. And I think we have heard today at least a couple of times Windows 11 readiness report,
Mhm.
and that's one of the highlights of working from anywhere report, because for all the customers that are looking now into embracing Windows 11 or just seeing how or when you will be able to move there, this is a great report that can help you understand how many devices are Windows 11 ready, or maybe help you plan ahead, like how you will work out with the future like ordering of the devices to be there in that stage.
Yeah, all four of the categories in work from anywhere, Windows, cloud identity, cloud management, cloud provisioning, they all kind of take your existing environment and tell you how to get ready for the future. Like, are you ready to be on a current version of Windows, like Windows 11 or the latest version? Do you have the hardware support? Is your AD ready to be hybrid joined or Azure AD joined and migrating your devices to be cloud only identity, right? It's great to understand exactly what you have there and look at all these detailed reports and say, like Nina said, like, are we ready to enable co-management these workloads? Yeah, here's a report that sees all these devices that are available for it. Great place to start. It's looking at that report.
All right. Next question, again about proactive remediations. Is there a way to include a folder with the detection script or a remediation script? And this could be a little bit of a what kind of flexibility do we have within remediation scripts for, um, what flexibility do we have?
I'm fairly confident, unless I would need to mess around more with PowerShell, you can't do that. um, the only available uploads are like the PS1 scripts, a PowerShell script that you've written for detection or remediation. You could do some very fun things with maybe pointing to a public blob storage and downloading a file there and then exporting it there, but certainly not natively. Um,
Yeah. Today, proactive remediations does not include the ability to include additional files or folders, which we have heard that feedback. There's some really cool solutions out there that are MVPs have written, where they're using some things that display like nice UIs or have additional scripts and files that are used as a part of the remediation. Today, kind of like Janus was saying, those do have to be external. We have seen customers use Azure Blob Storage to get those down there. Another way to do it is to have something like a Win32 app, where its whole purpose is just to put these files on the endpoint. We do know that customers are doing this. We're hearing the feedback. I'll say the same thing as we've said a couple times before. Please keep +1ing these things. Provide that feedback in the feedback link that's in the banner, and let us know that you've got this need. The ak.ms/Intune feedback. Please provide that feedback. We love hearing scenarios like this, and it would be great to hear the scenario that you're looking for of why you would want to include a folder. And I imagine there's also files within this folder that you're wanting to be able to execute against. The more we hear this from customers, the more we'll be able to take that into our prioritization.
All right. We've got just a few minutes left, so I've got one question here. Hopefully this is a fairly short one, and then we'll wrap things up. So the question is it possible to select multiple scope tag filters when generating the Windows Feature Update Device Readiness report? Alternatively, can you consider making the scope tag filter optional?
I would need to pull up the console. I know you can select the default scope filter, which would then be kind of like an optional. You're just using the default for the environment. And I know you can select one. I'm not sure. Maybe multiple isn't currently available, which is great to know.
Yeah, that's great feedback, and I'll actually share another bit of way to provide feedback within the portal. When you find things like this, if you look up at the top, you'll see a little person with a feedback icon, and that gives you a chance to share feedback with us. These are the types of things that, and it'll say send feedback to Microsoft. These are the type of little things that feature is great for. To help us discover some of these things when you find things that maybe aren't right or you think could be better within the portal.
All right. So we're down to our last couple of minutes. Let me just do a quick round with each of you and see if you've got your favorite tip or things that you want to let the audience know are important when they go back to their console. Take a look at this, try these out. Any favorites? First, we'll start with you, Janus.
If you haven't enabled endpoint analytics, it is super, super easy. If we pop open the endpoint analytics console and you say get started, you can just deploy it to devices and start collecting data. Try it out. You have a few dozen devices, maybe less, and you can start collecting all this information and start acting on it. So my tip is it's very easy to enable, and once you start looking at it, you'll be hooked.
Okay, let me add to that real quick. I think we've heard today a couple of questions, and we dig into Windows 11 Readiness Report and proactive remediations, which are great starting points, super useful features of the endpoint analytics. I just want to echo that we do have some more very useful scenarios how you can look at the application reliability, startup scores, because let's not forget that even though we are IT admins, we have a user out there and we need to make them happy. So start looking at those things too as well.
All right. Before you answer, John, I'm going to give you a chance to answer. Don't worry. But before you before you answer, we'd love to get your feedback about this particular session. There is a opportunity to provide feedback with a quick little survey. So if you would, please make sure to give us the information and your feedback about how this went and whether or not this is useful for you and how we can improve it for the next time. All right, John, to you to finish up with the last great tips for our users.
Yeah, thank you. And there's really nothing more that I can really add to what Janus and Nina just said. So the only thing I'll do is kind of underline what they said, is that one, enable endpoint analytics. Either get that through enabling tenant attach for your devices that are only managed by Configuration Manager, or if they're managed by Intune, enable it there. And it's super easy to enable as long as you have that prereq of tenant attach or enrollment into Intune or co-management. And then, like Nina said, there's these awesome reports, the startup report and the application reliability report. When I speak with customers, I actually call these the superhero reports, because if you go in and look at the startup performance score and you start looking at, we have this amount of time that's wasted every morning when our users boot up their PC, even if that's only a minute of time saving that you can do. If you multiply that by the number of users you have, say you have 20,000 users and it's a minute, you've now saved hundreds of thousands of hours in 1 year just by shaving 1 minute from boot up time. And if you do that, that is going to make you a superhero in your organization, because that equals real money. And I would say just start looking at those reports, the startup, the app reliability. Every time you find and fix one of those problems, it's one more chance for you to get those big kudos and the pat on the back.
That's awesome. I know that all of our IT pros love when we can throw a superhero cape on their back. All right. Well, I want to take a moment and thank everybody for your time today. Thank you, Janus. Thank you, Nina. Thank you, John, for your time and helping educate and answer questions for all of our customers. And especially thank you to all of you who joined today. This was a wonderful opportunity for us to hear feedback from you. I hope it was educational and valuable to you. And if you're interested in learning more about managing Apple devices, you can join us for the session that's coming up right after this. I'll be hosting the same type of AMA session around Apple management. Thank you so much for your time. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are in the world.